Hi, welcome back to this week's episode of the Righteous Ruckus podcast. I am your host, Riley Lowe, and I don't know if you ever even thought about this, but I want to pose a question to you. Was Jesus a wimp? Was he a wimpy guy? That I don't know. Was it? Let's look in. It's something that's just kind of been weighing on me. And I'm not talking about the God side of Jesus. I'm talking about the flesh side of Jesus. Is God in the flesh? I'm going to talk about what was Jesus actually like. So let's get into it.
It's time to get off the church benches and into the trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
All right, so before we start, whatever you can do to help spread this podcast, help more people see it, I would greatly appreciate it. Whatever you got to do there. And if you want to contact me, it's righteousruckuspodcast@gmail.com. Or you can also let me know you're praying for me or help support financially at givesendgo.com/support Righteous Ruckus. So, here's the thing. Was Jesus a wimp? Was he a wuss? Was he a sissy? Was he whatever derogatory term for a weak man that you could imagine? I've wrote some notes down here, so you might see me reading them. But it's one of the myths, I guess, that's come about is you look at the Renaissance paintings of Jesus and even the church paintings. And look at a stained glass window. Look at these pictures of Jesus that everybody had hanging in their living rooms in the 70s and 80s. And you kind of get the perception that Jesus was, and just kind of pop culture has taught us this, that Jesus was very passive and very soft-spoken and just very loving and sweet and kind. And that if we are just nice enough and persuasive enough and just open enough, then everybody will eventually become a Christian. And that's actually that's wrong. And that probably comes, I don't know, I don't think anybody that kind of has that image of Jesus is necessarily sinning or anything, but I just don't think it's accurate, and I think it's probably designed to emasculate Jesus and thus make him not appealing to men in general, right? Men, and you have to have men to be leaders of the home, to be spiritual leaders, to lead your families to Christ, right? That's, you don't have to have it, but it's, man, the numbers, the statistics alone are outstanding if a strong Christian man is leading the home. And you got a married mom and dad, and you got kids that they're raising, the percentage of kids that end up following Jesus and families that follow Jesus because they have a Christian man leading the household is outstanding. So if the enemy can make Jesus seem like a wimp and not attractive to men, then men won't become Christian, and thus not as many Christians will be converted because there won't be as many Christian households in the world. I hope that makes sense. I know it's kind of that was kind of a long story there, but or a long train of thought. But I mean, it is what it is, and I really think it's probably the view that Christians need to be timid and weak and passive, and instead of being bold and preaching the truth and speaking for justice. I think that's just a lie from the pit of hell. So we basically, Christians, by having this personification of Jesus as being so weak and timid and mild, we kind of, I don't know, the church, for lack of better terms, like kind of neuters themselves or castrates themselves, right? They don't have any, don't have a backbone, don't have no cojones, right? So, when culture clashes, then we can, let me just cower in the corner and, what would Jesus do? Well, he would just be nice and he would just accept and he would just be loving, even though they're using loving in a different term than what love actually means. So, and what that results in is the culture has no problem shoving Christianity off in the corner. And anytime the culture clashes with Christianity, they're more than willing to just, all right, well, you get off in the margin and we're here now. You shut up and sit down and be quiet. And the Christians are usually like, well, I mean, what do we got to do to gain your acceptance? Do we need to have drag queens come and preach a sermon? When we will do that. That's it sounds outlandish, but it happens, and it is happening right now. So we don't. The thing is, a lot of congregations and pastors and whole churches have kind of been domesticated, right? The culture has formed because in their effort to attract the culture in any way they can, they've become like domesticated house cats, right? Well, we know that we can do whatever we want, and you're going to come sit in my lap, and I'm just going to pet you when I want to feel good, right? The rest of the time, you go do your thing. I'll clean your litter box. We'll take care of you, give you some food. But for the big things, we're gonna go do our own thing, and then I'll just pet you when I feel good. That's how the culture kind of views the church. It's unfortunate, but it seems like the truth. Man, I hope I'm wrong, but it just seems like that's the way that the truth or that the culture treats the church and treats Jesus. They think of him as a wuss, you know? And so the thing is, Jesus is not a house cat. Jesus is not domesticated. He's the Lion of Judah, and he's not tame, all right? So let's take a look at some examples of how Jesus is actually described, right? The man, I'm talking about, Jesus was fully man and fully God. It's impossible for us to wrap our minds around that. I completely understand that. And I want to look at the man side, the part that the Pharisees saw, that the culture saw, that his disciples saw, that everybody was presented with and ultimately had a problem with. All right, so let's take a look at this. So what did Jesus look like? I already mentioned the paintings, the Renaissance paintings and all that. Here, I'll throw one up there on the screen to show you. But Jesus, he was born in like the middle of the Middle East, right? This dude was not pale white like me unless he had been locked in a cave somewhere, right? But Jesus was out and about. He had a tan. He had, he wasn't white. He wasn't black. He probably looked like a Middle Eastern, somebody that was born in the Middle East. That's probably what he looked like, And let's just say Jesus probably wasn't beautiful, right? All these pictures try to make him look so beautiful and all that. And like he just went in front of the makeup people and they put some blush on his face and powdered his nose and plucked his eyebrows to where everything looked perfect and all the hair was in the right place. And then he, they took a picture of him or painted him, right? He posed for his painting. But let's take a look. Let's look at Isaiah. This is really the only verse I want to cover. I'm just going to cover, there's more verses on all of these, but I just want to cover like one verse in each. Let's look at Isaiah. This is going to be Isaiah 53, and let's see. Hold on, let me find my place here. We're in Isaiah 53, verse 2. All right. So this is Isaiah prophesying the sin-bearing Messiah. Okay. So it says, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root from dry ground." Here you go. "He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." He didn't look like a movie star. He didn't look like a model. He didn't look like anything. He just looked like the run-of-the-mill Middle Eastern dude that was unassuming in appearance, in his face anyways. People weren't astonished by his beauty, except for maybe, his disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration, when he starts glowing and everything. Now, he wasn't it wasn't like, oh, we gotta go carve a marble statue of Jesus because he looks like a Greek god. No, Jesus was There it is again. There is no beauty that we should desire him. The dude just looked like a guy, right? He wasn't extravagantly beautiful. That wasn't why people were flocking to him. They weren't saying, "Oh, Jesus, he is just so good looking." All right. So even though that's what's portrayed, and that's the vision of Jesus that we have in our brains of when he walked the earth, that he looked like this, the long flowing hair and the beard that's trimmed just right, and everything, and just a perfect complexion. And he looks like he's about to cry all the time. And that's the view that people have. But no, he's a rough looking dude, right? He was walking around doing stuff his whole life. This guy was out in the elements. He probably had weathered skin and a nice tan. And he was a worker. He was out there grinding every day. And here's another thing. And I just started kind of coming around to this thought, right? How many times, there's just a few places in the Bible where it seems like Jesus raises his voice, right? Other than that, we kind of, I say we, at least I have, growing up, you always kind of think of, well, Jesus was just nice and had this soft-spoken voice. He would sound like he's on NPR at midnight, right? This is how Jesus is thought to have sounded. Like he's just got this soft, monotone voice that's just, people would be like, "Speak up, Jesus, I didn't hear you." "Oh, okay, well, let me speak a little bit." No, that's not what Jesus, that's not how he was, right? Jesus had a loud voice. Jesus had a loud voice. Listen to this. This is going to be Luke 5. This is just one. Luke 5. So this is when he calls 4 disciples, but he was near this lake, right? And so here, I'm going to read this. "So it was as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God." There's multitudes. That's not a handful of people. That's probably hundreds or thousands of people that are pressing him in because they want to hear. They want to get close to Jesus and be sure that they hear, right? So there's hundreds or thousands of people gathered here. And as he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats, Jesus saw 2 boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. So he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, who he later called Peter, and asked him to put out a little from the land. So Jesus, there's all these people gathered around, and Jesus says, "Well, I want to be able to talk to all of them at the same time. So let's get in a boat and get further away from them." Does that make sense? No. If he was just all real soft and quiet, they would be pressing in because they couldn't hear him. But he wanted to be sure that everybody heard. So he got in the boat, and it says here, and he sat down and taught the multitudes from the boat. So he says, let's go out a little ways so I can see everybody and I can speak to everybody. Now, if he was going to be screaming at everybody so that everybody could hear, he would probably be standing up. It's hard to get a good deep breath and yell when you are sitting down in a boat, right? But yet he had such a voice that he could project his wisdom to all those people, the multitudes, it says, who whether it's 5,000, like when he fed the 5,000, or more than that, with 5,000 men. Whether it's whoever, when he's teaching in the synagogue, nobody says, this guy was really quiet and unassuming. He spoke with authority. Jesus spoke with authority. And I just think that's awesome, and just kind of transforming my way of thinking into Jesus being able to just project his voice and be loud is just, it's just kind of, a shift in my way of thinking there is not Jesus just kind of cowering down and just talking to himself. No, he's talking to people, and people know this dude can really throw it down, right? He can project his voice. Nobody has problems hearing Jesus. Nobody has problems hearing Jesus. Now, here's another thing. This is something that I recently kind of even thought about. I didn't even think about this before, hardly. But how do you think Jesus looked like just walking down the street? All right. The pictures and the visions and everything, we think about, we already talked about his beauty. Now think about like I've heard, I heard a guy talking about if you were not a Christian and you had never heard of Jesus, which sadly to say, that day is here or is almost here in the United States, right? Where somebody can be raised up and not know nothing about Jesus and never really hear anything about him. That day is here or fast approaching. And if you walked into a church and they were singing, "Oh, we just abide in Jesus' bosom," or whatever kind of weird thing, I heard this guy say, somebody that come from the world would be like, "What is this? Is some sort of homoerotic song, about this dude? What is going on here?" And that's kind of, there's nothing wrong with those songs. I'm not bashing the songs, but I just want you to have this in your mind that Jesus was not, he's portrayed in the stained glass and in our minds and in the pictures and the paintings as looking like a sad vegan that's about to cry because he's never had a steak in his life, right? A lot of them, even his wrists are all limp, and he just looks like he has no muscle in his hands, and looks like, oh, I'm going to struggle to pick up this fork. That's kind of how it looks. That's how Jesus is presented. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus looked like Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah, wait, baby!
But what I am saying is that Jesus was a carpenter. Listen to this. This is Matthew 13, right? Verse 55 and 56. This is after he preached out of Isaiah, in the synagogue, and they're all looking at each other because this dude just laid it down. He filled the whole place with authority. And they're saying, "Is this not the carpenter's son? Is his mother not called Mary? This is Mary and Joseph's kid. This is the carpenter's boy." You know how they probably knew he was the carpenter's boy? They knew that he was the carpenter's boy, but Jesus, his trade, traditionally, the son is going to be growing up and going to be going into the father's trade. So this guy, he didn't get out his DeWalt miter saw and cut boards. He's cutting them by hand. He's drilling holes, not with his power drill. He's drilling holes by hand. He's doing everything by hand. This dude probably had the grip strength of a farmer and has been hauling hay all day. And he's probably got forearms like Popeye, and he's probably got broad shoulders. This dude, I'm not saying that he looks like Ronnie Coleman. I'm saying that he's probably a big, broad-shouldered, imposing guy. And actually, when you think about it, what did Jesus do? When he went, and so think about this too. So Jesus. Let me pull this up. And so when Jesus got done saying all of that, right? So he goes, when he's reading Isaiah, they go to throw him off of a cliff after he basically says everything that I just said of Isaiah, of prophesying about the Messiah, it's all been fulfilled right here, right? And so that's the thing. They go to throw him off of a cliff. And what did he do? When they got to the cliff, he turned around and walked right through them. Now, could it be he supernaturally, like as a ghost, kind of floated through them? And they're like, well, where'd this dude go? He kind of disappeared. I don't know. Oh, he's behind us. He's headed out now. Maybe. Or everybody's all whipped up into a frenzy. This guy claimed to be God. We're going to throw him off the cliff. And then they get to the cliff and they're getting ready to do it. And everybody's like, yeah, throw him off. And Jesus turns around and is like, well, no, not today, guys. Not today. And they know, well, if I go against Jesus, Jesus may start to throw some haymakers at me. And there's enough of us here that we could still get him over the cliff. But if he starts throwing blows, I might get hit. Or that guy might. Have you seen that dude? That dude looks like he could scrap. Right? So that's what I'm saying is this dude was physically strong. That's all I'm saying here. Not the gaunt, wimpy, malnourished Jesus that we see everywhere. That's not, I don't believe, who Jesus was. And then Jesus also stood up to the powers that be. Let's look at John 2, 13 through 17. Right? John 2, 13 through 17. So this is also him being physically strong, but this is him deciding. This is not Jesus just went off the handle, right? So this is where he cleanses the temple. This is like one of the most famous stories in the Bible. So it says, now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the money changers doing business. When he had they're in the temple, right? They got these animals in the temple. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen and poured out the money changers' money, overturned the tables. And he said to those who sold doves, take these things and get out of here. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise. Then his disciples remembered when it was written, quote, zeal for your house has eaten me up. So the Jews answered him, what sign do you show to us since you do these things? Jesus said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. Now they didn't understand exactly what he was saying there, but he is bucking the system. He goes into the temple and kicks everybody out. The powers that be, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they could have done that, but they just let all this stuff go on, right? And, this is just one example, but this is the thing. He didn't like what the culture was doing. So what did he do? He didn't just go nuts. He made a plan. When he had made a whip of cords, have you ever made a whip of cords? I never have. Let's get some leather strip. He didn't just grab somebody's whip. That's kind of what's always stuck in my mind is like, oh, he just grabbed somebody's whip and started going to town, kicking everybody out. No, he saw him there and he's like, I don't like this. And he probably started making his whip. There's probably people around him, going, hey, what are you doing over there, Jesus of Nazareth? And he's like, oh, you're about to find out, And so he makes a whip. That may have taken hours. That may have taken more than a day. I don't know. He's probably pretty good at making whips. I'm sure he knew how to do it. And he gets that thing that he just made, and he starts whipping people and kicking them out of there and kicking the animals out of there, cracking the whip, so to speak, literally, right? So that's all I'm saying, guys. Jesus, he's always often portrayed as so beautiful that, he's never seen the light of day, and he's just kept up in a monastery somewhere and always tending to his makeup regimen every single day. That's not Jesus. Jesus is also, kind of portrayed as being quiet and meek and nice and just timid, like a dog with its tail between his legs. That's not Jesus. Jesus had a loud voice. Jesus was physically strong. The dude was a carpenter that worked with his hands all the time. And Jesus stood up for what was right. Right? That's the thing. Jesus stood up. So, it's just time for us to be done with this. Oh, we just got to be so nice and mild and meek, and what you see stuff. What is an ally for sinful behavior? Everything. Oh, you got to be like that. No, it's never worked. It never will. If you just try to conform to what the culture is not going to say, well, this is something different I need to do. They're just going to say, look, I get to keep doing what I'm doing, and the church is coming right along with it. So what I'm getting at, the bottom line is, God has not called us to be nice as Christians. We think that God has called us to just be so nice. And I struggle with this, guys. I'm by nature a nice guy. I struggle with this. I really do. I'm trying to get over this. But God has not called us to be nice. He has called us to be good. Nice people rarely confront evil or point out error, but good people do. If you're good, you will confront evil and you will call out when somebody is wrong and doing something wrong. You know, it's the truth is what sets people free. I am the truth, and the truth will set you free. You have known the truth will set you free. Jesus is the truth. That's what we got to get to people. Truth, Jesus sets men free. And genuine love will drive us to declare the truth no matter what the cost. No matter if it's your job, no matter if it's your friends, no matter if it's you might get canceled, no matter if it's your podcast gets taken off the internet. Who cares? You have to do that. So it's time to put on the full armor of God and take the sword of Spirit out of the sheath, and let's get swinging.